Welcome to Trench Diaries. Sword Beach, Part 3. The bunker was so full of smoke that it was impossible to see anything except a faint blur which suggested that first light had come, if not dawn. It was close to 5 a.m. at this point. I could hear shooting from the distance and also German voices shouting closer at hand. This told me that we had been relieved by a counterattack and that the English were being driven off. I opened the trapdoor fully and climbed up into the bunker. Slowly, the smoke and dust cleared and daylight came in through the embrasure. It became apparent what had happened. The enemy had set off several explosive charges around the gun breech and had tried to detonate the bunker ammunition also. There was an explosive pouch stuck between the 10-centimeter rounds with electric wires, but this had not gone off. This was fortunate because it would probably have blown the floor down on top of us in the chamber. It was clear that the gun was damaged and needed extensive repair work. As we examined this, we opened the rear doors to ventilate the bunker and found a large group of German troops outside, firing into the distance. The attackers had essentially completed their mission, if it was to disable the guns for the time being. Now they were retreating down the slopes towards the nearby village, exchanging fire with our men as they went. I saw one of our quadruple 20mm flak guns on a half-track carriage that had been brought into the battery site, and it was firing below horizontal at the retreating enemy. Around the bunker there was a lot of destruction. The glider which had come down was crashed very close behind our bunker, with its tail part burned off. There were 2 dead English troops visible hanging out of the glider, and many more scattered around the battery, between the bunkers and even on the roofs of the bunkers. They had black paint on their faces and wore red berets. They were armed with the Sten-type gun, which we knew to be very effective at short range, but liable to jamming. In fact, some of these English troops seemed to have picked up German MP40 guns during the combat. There were also many dead German troops, both our artillerymen and the infantry, which had relieved us. I took all this in within a few seconds, and then my attention was drawn to the air overhead. There were huge numbers of aircraft in progress across the sky, which was still a grey-white color. These were both bomber and what appeared to be transport planes. We were immediately strafed by a fighter plane, which dived on us from overhead, and our flak cannon with great versatility raised its barrels in an attempt to fire back at this aircraft. This plane, which was a Spitfire type, shot up the flak cannon and smashed open its half-track bed, so we were without air defense. We went quickly back into the bunker as a result. During that time, our men were already working on the guns in each of our 4 bunkers. Of the 4 guns, the enemy had driven off the gunners from 3 of them. We were the only ones who had remained in our gun in the underground chamber, which I was very proud of. The damage done was serious, however. Our gun and 1 other were badly damaged and would have to be extensively remachined. 2 others were less seriously hit, and work was underway on them already to try to bring them back into action. At this stage I was seen by a medical orderly who examined the wound in my arm. By this stage it was impossible for me to move my arm at all. It was bleeding heavily, and the diagnosis was that the bones were broken, hence my inability to use it. I was urged to retreat from the sector to a field dressing station inland, where the wound could be treated. As my gun was out of action, my commander ordered me to go to the dressing station and then return later in the day, taking with me the various walking wounded from the battery. A truck was found to take us, and as I waited for the wounded men to board it, I used binoculars to scan the sea in the distance beyond the plateau. At that point, the full dimensions of the attack became clear to me. The horizon of the sea was filling up with vast numbers of ships. Anyone who was present will confirm that the horizon was literally filled from east to west with vessels. I could not make them out, but there appeared to be a huge variety of types, including substantial battleships. Above them, the constant stream of aircraft flew inland, making the air itself vibrate with their noise. There was the sound of heavy bombing from further inland. We were all struck speechless at this sight for several seconds, as we had not envisaged the full scale of the onslaught that was about to hit us. Above all, there was no sign of our own forces fighting back on sea or in the air. The sea between us and this oncoming horde was completely empty and featureless, and there were no dogfights or aerial battles taking place overhead. I tried to remove myself from the ambulance truck because my natural inclination was to be present in combat when this massive force arrived, but my commander ordered me again to leave and to return later when my gun was in state to be operated. Reluctantly, I went to the field hospital and had the bones in my arm set. This journey of a few kilometers was full of risks in itself, as the Allied fighter-bomber aircraft began to strafe continually along all the inland roads to disrupt the defending transports. We were constantly taking refuge under trees or in ditches as these aircraft, apparently without any opposition, roved across the inland landscape. To my great regret, the events of the battery overtook us all. Although we held the battery on the 6th of June itself, later in the day it was cut off by the Allied troops, and those of us in the hospital zone were unable to rejoin it. In effect, the front line was between us and the battery. The battery held out for some time until later in the month, remaining as a fortress-type installation behind the Allied lines until it eventually surrendered. I myself was ultimately reassigned to a series of batteries further west on the Brittany coast, and these were in turn isolated and cut off by the Allied advances in July. I was eventually taken prisoner at a point near Cap Grinet and went into captivity under the Americans. If you were to ask me how important it was for the Allies to capture my battery, I think they overestimated the capacity of the guns immensely. These were 10cm guns, not the long-range warship guns which some of our installations were equipped with. Our guns would have been a danger to them in their landing in our area, but not to the extent that we could have obstructed the landings completely. Nevertheless, I can appreciate that they saw a need to eliminate the guns at that early stage for the sake of security, considering they would have to be eliminated sooner or later in the campaign anyway. It was certainly a brave and audacious assault to use a glider and paratroopers in that way in the darkness, but remember, we did in fact retake the position and defend it from then on. Like so many things in war, the real significance of this battle is rather hard to judge in retrospect. Epilogue. Leutnant Wergens was part of the 716th Infantry Division. This division lost about 50% of its troops during D-Day and had to withdraw. It was almost completely wiped out by early 1945, despite being reinforced to its nominal strength shortly after the invasion. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy this channel, you know how the algorithm works. Like, comment, subscribe. It means a lot to me. See you in the next video.